Hey everybody, this is Eli from Elfbait, and welcome back to day 20 of the Dungeons & Dragons 30-day challenge. Today's topic, favorite humanoid, giant, or fae. I think I'm going to tackle this the way I've been tackling all of them, and that's really to pick one from each category. I find that it's more interesting to talk about a wider variety of monsters, and I don't really think that it's fair to group each monster category into or lump them together. I mean, there's a lot of difference in what you get with a giant versus a humanoid versus a fae, and so I mean, really, I think that when this challenge was put together, I know they were trying to get 30 days. But I really think that you could do like a 30-day challenge just on monsters. And actually, maybe I'll do that sometime soon, do like a 30-day alphabetical challenge of monsters. What's your favorite A monster, your favorite B monster? That would be fun because then you can really just get down. And it's an interesting categorization. I mean, what monster do you like the most in this particular letter category? But for now, we're talking about fae, humanoids, and giants. So let's start with the small guys, the fae. No, not all fae are super tiny. I mean, you certainly have human-sized fae, and there are even some large-sized fae, depending on what categorization of fae you're going for. Fae have had a great boost through the Kobold Press, Tome of Beasts. D&D in the core monster manual was a little limited on the fae. Back when I did my video on fae, we found out that there were only 7 in the monster manual, and then Volos expanded that by 10. Now, Tome of Beasts throws in, I don't know how many, there's so many in there, and a lot of really powerful and a lot of lesser powerful in fae. But I'm going to stick to the ones that most people are going to have access to, and that's going to be Volos and monster manual. So out of all of those, I would say it would have been Quickling, but now that the Darklings are now considered fae, they have to be my favorite. I always liked the Dark Stalkers and the Dark Creepers from Fiend Folio back. Fiend Folio was the first monster book I ever owned back in the 80s. Bought it with my allowance, picked it up at the local department store, and it was... It's a weird place to start if you think about it, because I had that before I even owned the monster manual. Other friends of mine had the monster manual, but in there were some of the craziest creatures, and admittedly some of the most evil, nasty creatures to ever have been created for AD&D, and a good chunk of those, fortunately, because their reputation was so good, have lived on into 5th edition. Well, the Dark Creepers and the Dark Stalkers have now moved their way into 5th edition and are now counted among the ranks of the Fae. So, bit of a note to the honorable mention there of the Quickling. The Quickling would have been my favorite Fae that has been Fae since AD&D. It was in the Monster Manual 2. Quickling was a super fast pixie sprite type character. Didn't fly, but it ran super fast. It had like a move rate of 96 or something to that effect, and had something like 9 attacks per melee or some ungodly thing. It was really, really super cool, but they lived a short time. But if you encountered one, they would usually mess you up if you got in a fight, even though they're only fighting with daggers. But on to Dark Creepers, Dark Stalkers, or as they are known now, Darklings. The Darklings are kind of skulking humanoids that live in the dark, thus the name Darkling. But the neat thing about Darklings is they're intelligent, creepy guys who have this hierarchical system. And so, I mean, in the original forms, as the Dark Creeper and Dark Stalker, they were really designed as a very formidable but low to mid range dungeon opponent. They have death effects, so when you kill them, they have an actual basically, there's instant payback. They burst into light or flame or something to that effect, and so it really makes them a nasty thing to fight, because if you're in melee combat with one and it bursts into flame or bursts into blinding light, you're going to suffer for that. And seeing as they are at home in darkness and you probably are not, having your vision further impaired is not really going to be a good idea. So the nice thing about Darklings too is that, you know, they're another creature that has been uplifted to a higher status in the game. As originally in the Fiend Folio they had society, but now they have there's a hint at more. You could easily do Darklings with class levels or Darklings with special abilities pulled from other classes. You know, a Darkling Warlock, Darkling Assassins, things like that really do lend themselves well. They're a creature that lends themselves well to customization because they are very much kind of lair monsters. You know, what is in a Darkling lair, they're probably going to be dealing with a lot of other minions of dark you know, creatures that really benefit from dark environments. So they're a good base creature. Now, making them Fey, the fact that they're Fey is kind of inconsequential to what makes them cool, but now as Fey, they become part of that greater court, that hierarchy of fairy folk that are out there, and just one more way to access that part of the game. The Feywild seems to slowly but surely be creeping up into prominence in 5th edition. I'm hoping we'll see an actual supplement or an adventure path that takes place to a great extent in the Feywild. If there has been one, I missed it. Yeah, so for my selection for Fey, it's going to be the Darklings because they're now Fey. Giants. I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum, and then we'll get back to humanoids. For me, giants, my favorite giant has been the stone giant. Stone giants are more powerful than hill giants, but they're not quite up there to that level of spectacle that you start getting into with frost giants and moving into fire giants and all the way up to cloud and storm. Stone giants are cool because they seem to have a bit of a higher purpose to them than just the gluttonous hill giant, which is your typical giant of lore. I know that stone giants are informed by Native American folklore to a degree, and so there's that aspect to them too, that out of all of the giants, picking up a bit of a cold, so I apologize for the soothing drink. Stone giants, you know, like fire giants and ice giants, you know, and then up to, you know, you've got storm and cloud giants. They're elemental, you know, this is where you start seeing the elemental context. Hill giants are just kind of they're part of the humanoid landscape. Excuse me again. Total sin to be on camera drinking, but you know, if I'm going to do these videos and get them out, gotta have something for the throat. But yeah, so stone giants are cool. They're smarter than hill giants, so you can actually get along with them a little bit better. They have a I don't know, a kind of a nobility to them, whereas, you know, I can't say that it's because they're just tribally neat, because hill giants are also, you know, that as well. But stone giants, you know, they have that connection to earth. They have that kind of ancient aspect to them. I like the fact that when they've created them over time, they still continue to do this. They almost have that appearance of the Easter Island heads, the Moai, or whatever they're called. And you know, that just speaks to this kind of ancient Neolithic, Paleolithic ancestry to these giants. Like, they've been walking the earth maybe longer than the other giants or something to that effect. But yeah, so stone giants are neat. They're not as powerful as a frost giant or fire giant. They're not going to be, you know, as mythically awesome as a cloud giant or a storm giant, but I think they're a giant that you can have your party encounter at different levels and still be challenging, but also be it's not something that's going to be an imminent threat, like an unbeatable threat to your party. One stone giant, two stone giants, later on more stone giants. Stone giants tie in nicely with, you know, with elemental themes, like some of the other giants, but you know, they're an elemental theme that you can find without going to extremes. I mean, storm giants, you're going to find them at sea. Cloud giants are up in the clouds. Ice and fire giants, you have to go to volcanoes or the freezing north to find them. But a stone giant could still be just outside of town. Hill giants are probably going to be closer. There's like this weird radius of humanoids. You got your giants, and then your ogres, and then your orcs, kind of radiating out. And like the closer you get to human civilization, you're going to have your lesser humanoids. But somewhere out there is a stone giant tending an ancient stone circle, or living in a cave where he's scrawling ancient secrets on the walls. And I really like that about the giants, as opposed, they're not throwing fireballs and keeping hellhounds on leashes, but a stone giant might have a cave bear, or maybe a stone giant is attended by a collection of Galabdur, little elemental stone guys or something like that, or maybe he's friends with the local dwarves, helps them out. But they're a really cool giant in my opinion, so they stick out for me as my favorite giant of the core giants. I mean, there's always going to be odd giants out there, reef giants, marsh giants. It's the old fog giant from the Fiend Folio. So yeah, that would be my giant pick. Now, humanoids. There's a lot to pick from, and if you go back far enough, you can even count kobolds amongst humanoids, even though they've kind of entered the realm, entered the circle of dragon kind. They used to be lesser goblins, and in fact, in second edition, they even tried to bring them more into the fold by making them look less doggish. I mean, if you remember the old school kobolds, dog snouts, little devil horns, little devil tails, kind of scaly skin. There was always the hint at being draconic back then, but they were just more originally they were more one of those kind of gonzo fantasy mashups, just kind of like orcs. While the description of orcs talks about them being pig-faced, I have a feeling that was never meant to be as literal as the illustration in the original Monster Manual showed them. I think pig-faced was supposed to be a little bit more metaphorical, or just descriptive, pugged noses, pointy ears, whatever. But I don't think they were actually meant to have the heads of pigs. But that was the style back then. Your creatures were much more stylized and kind of accessed that crazy gonzo fantasy aspect. But we're not talking about all humanoids. We're talking about which one is my favorite. And for me, it's got to be bugbears. And that's Ophelia. We've got a visitor today. She's going to stalk the hobby table behind me. And she has a voice, so ignore her if she starts talking. I'm the host. It's not her. So when you have all these different humanoids, my favorite's got to be the bugbear. For me, bugbears stand out. I've used them a lot in my games. I like them because they're powerful. They also don't look like the rest of humanoids. In every interpretation of the bugbears, they have always been these big, scruffy, hairy guys. In old AD&D versions, they looked way different than the rest of goblin kind. I think orcs look more like bugbears now than bugbears look like orcs. But I like the bugbears because, first of all, bugbears, I never really bought. In my version of bugbears, they were never hindered by darkness and light. I believe hobgoblins out of the old school humanoids were the only ones that could really go out in daylight unhindered. But I used bugbears in the polar north in Greyhawk. We had blue bugbears. I've used them as tribal creatures in the woods before. They're very savage, beast-man-y looking things without actually, being like the Brew from RuneQuest or the Beastmen from Warhammer Fantasy, which are basically the same thing. But, and they just stick out a little bit more. I mean, they're hairy creatures that, because of that furriness, because of that environmental protection, you can also see them out in cold Arctic steppe regions without being encumbered with clothing and stuff like that. They just have this savage feel to them. So I really do like the bugbears. I actually played a bugbear PC once, way back when, in our Greyhawk days, cobbled together a bugbear character. mind you, we were young then, so it went a little crazy. I ended up with a bugbear who was also a were-elephant, because every time you would get attacked by an animal, that particular DM liked to check to see if the animal was carrying lycanthropy, and if the animal was carrying lycanthropy, you had a percentage chance of ending up as a were creature of that particular animal type. In this case, we fought an elephant, and the elephant was carrying lycanthropy, and so my bugbear ended up being a were-elephant, which was kind of cool, because when he elephanted out, when he went full-on beast mode, he was actually this giant mammoth looking thing. And when he half-elephanted, he was really this hairy mammoth dude. So it was pretty cool, visually. And then later on, that character ended up getting some crazy magic items. He had 3 small boulders that were enchanted to hover and responded to his thoughts. He went through this horrible period of time where everything he thought about, the boulders would strike, until he could actually do enough wisdom checks or intelligence checks to get control of the boulders. The poor bugbear went hungry for several days, because every time he thought of food, the boulders would go smash whatever he was going to eat to being inedible. He actually got attacked by his own boulders. But anyways, yeah, bugbears have a long history with me. I like them more than hobgoblins, which are actually a close second. Hobgoblins are neat if you really need militaristic, efficient humanoids who are probably going to throw ninjas at you also. That's hobgoblins. They also make great hobgoblins, make great horde monsters. But yeah, for me, it's got to be bugbears. Bugbear tribes, bugbears with totems, bugbears with shamans and shamanistic magic. For me, bugbears are actually a nice stand-in for things like Celtic or Germanic tribes. Instead of hairy, bearded, half-naked, bearskin-wearing humans coming out of the woods, well, now you have big, hairy, skin-wearing, or not, humanoid tribes. But then you can actually overlay that thought of tribalism, and instead of being just rank humanoids that are just out there to eat your babies and steal your gold, you have these are the Wyvern clan, and they live at the tree line, and over there you have the Stone Wolf clan, and they live in the deep forests. And so, I mean, you can do that with all the humanoids, but I think the bugbears really have that barbarian feel just baked into them. So if you wanted to substitute barbarian tribes in your game for bugbears, it's an easy fix. And bugbears, being like 2 or 3 hit dice now, are tough opponents, and so are going to give most parties a run for their money, even in small groups. So that has been day 20. Favorite humanoid, favorite giant, favorite fae. There are a lot to choose from in this category. These are not easy. You have 17 fae just between Monster Manual and Volo's Guide. Kobold Press has been doing a crap ton more. There's a bunch of homebrew out there that is always available. If you go to Reddit, Unearthed Arcana page, they have just the subreddit for the Unearthed Arcana there. That's just amazing. There's lots of good stuff you can pull from there. And I'm not hobgoblins, but humanoids are they're a staple. They're a core to the game. So there's always more of those. You've got goblins, you've got kobolds, you've got orcs, hobgoblins, orcs, goblins, kobolds, orogs, norkers. It goes on. There's so many that I'm forgetting. What is it? The one they did that was like the crazy hobgoblins. Technically, gnolls and flins are in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the humanoid category. And then giants. You've got a good solid core of giants in the Monster Manual, and some expanded content in Volo's Guide for those. And then giants are a favorite for game designers. Every monster book that ever comes out for a fantasy game includes more giants. So Kobold's done that. I know that 5th edition Foes has a couple of giants in it. I'm pretty sure that they're in there as well. Giants... Another thing to say about giants, too, and most humanoids, is that they are good blank slates for creating new creatures. So a stone giant that morphs into something else easily by porting other abilities over to it. Also, being elemental creatures, Giants, like the stone giant, are also good for pulling other stone-themed monsters' abilities onto them. Take the breath of a Gorgon, for example, and apply it to like a stone giant shaman. Maybe he's got some gift of their god, and now he can actually petrify opponents by breathing, petrifying gas onto them. So I mean, you can definitely do a lot with those. But anyways, again, really having fun with the 30-day challenge, trying to get them cranked out as quick as I can. I fell behind a bit. Appreciating the comments. Already had a few comments on the last one for favorite construct and plant type. Keep them coming. I've got some ideas I'm thinking about for doing more monster videos. I like talking about monsters and how to use them and how to abuse them and change them into other things and morph them into new creatures. So think about monsters. If you haven't set yourself up on if you're on Facebook and you haven't joined the Elfbait Facebook group, go over there. I do post occasional questions over there and ideas. And so if I'm looking for ideas for videos, I'll likely post it over there. It's a great place to communicate. Like, share, subscribe, and keep chatting down there, and I'll keep doing the videos. Anyways, I'm going to put a close to this. This one ran a little long for simply a 30-day challenge, but there's a lot to talk about, and that's why I'm doing as many of the monsters in the category as I can, because I think it makes a better video. But ultimately, take what you will from these videos, use them, abuse them, steal, share, and most importantly, get out and game.